Hello and welcome to the Fully Charged Show podcast. Now, this week's episode is with a man I met many years ago who has been intrinsically and deeply involved in the development of electric transportation from really the very, very early days. I'll try and remember to ask him about all the various aspects of the work he's been doing. But he's an extraordinary man, very amusing, very, very well informed. And so this week's episode of the Fully Charged Show podcast really rather heavily features Mr. Roger Atkins. This episode of the Fully Charged podcast is sponsored by LV. So LV were the UK's first insurer who designed a cover specifically for electric vehicles. That's why their electrifying insurance targets problems specifically for EV drivers. So offering accidental damage, fire and theft cover for wall boxes, charging cables and adapters as standard. That is just standard. LV's electric vehicle insurance also comes with the same amazing features as their de facto 5-star rated car insurance, like a lifetime repair guarantee when using a recommended repair service. Search lv.com/electric and start getting a quote today. Or you can visit them at their booth at Fully Charged Live. I mean, Roger, for a start, thank you for finding time to come on Fully Charged podcast on a Saturday afternoon when it's been a lovely day. But we've both been out a bit this morning,
exactly.
So that's good. Yeah. But I just thought, I really wanted to I want you to do it regularly because you just know so much stuff. So just to explain, Roger and I did it was a conference, wasn't it, the other day? That's what we actually did.
Yes.
An online conference.
We did, online and everything, but I could see you and you could see me, but yeah. There was no touching. Nobody touched.
There was no touching at all. We were all completely physically isolated, but we were visually and orally connected. We have to say that. But that was, I found that one, because sometimes it's really difficult. I find it's really difficult having multiple conversations over, video conferencing stuff. But that worked quite well, I suppose, because we all kind of took turns.
Yes.
It wasn't.
Taking turns is good. That's what everyone's doing now. We take turns to shop. We take turns to go for a walk. We take turns to not. Well, no, you can't take turns to go to the pub now. Take turns. Yeah, we just take turns. It's getting much more polite. Society's becoming very polite.
That would be nice, wouldn't it? It would be good if it got more polite. Yeah. I did ask my wonderful wife this morning. She said, I'm going out for a walk. I said, oh, shall I come with you? And she just looked at me and went, no, I'm seeing you all day. Why would you come out for a walk with me?
She wasn't going for a walk. She was escaping.
She was just getting away from the annoying old man. But so I've got. I'm hoping you've come up with some genius topics because the ones that I've sent you. I think they're interesting.
Yes.
The EV lamppost one. But anyway, if you've got anything, do tell me.
Yeah, Formula 1 and Formula E, I want to talk about motorsport and that kind of thing that's going on. I have some thoughts and observations on that for sure.
Oh, that's good. Because, the first one I wanted to mention, just because it seems to be a next step thing. It's always hard to tell with corporate blurb. But this is from Siemens, isn't it? But they've done the EV lamppost electric avenue thing in London, in West 9 in London. So it's on one street. There's 24 charging points.
Yeah.
Yes, on one avenue. And I know Sutherland Avenue, W9, strangely enough, so I didn't realise. I actually used to have a mate who lived there, so...
Oh, I thought you were going to tell us you used to be a taxi driver and you knew where all the streets were in London.
Yeah, obviously, I know the knowledge. I knew exactly where it was. But it's one of those weird ones where I saw this thing and went, what? Wait a minute, I know Sutherland Avenue, where's that? Yeah. Anyway...
See, I just had a moment there where I imagined that at some point in the future, Rob, for whatever reason, you are a taxi driver, and then I get in the back of the taxi at one point and I see you, I say, oh, didn't you used to be Robert Llewellyn?
I've actually had someone come up to me on the street and say that. Didn't you used to be Robert Llewellyn that did Scrap Heap Challenge? I went, yeah, I did. I was there, but I'm not anymore. Moved on. But no, because I actually used, for the first time, about 2 months, was that this year? No, just before Christmas, when I had the Hyundai Kona in the middle of London, and I parked, there was a gap in the parking, in the residence parking, in the evening, which never happens, next to a lamppost that was an Ubitricity socket lamppost. I went, oh my God. And you don't have to have an account with them. That's what I really like. You plug it in. There's a what are those little square things with the patterns on that we're meant to know what they're called, and we can't remember because we're a bit old. Where you take a picture of it with your camera and it takes you somewhere.
Yes, yes. It's it's not a barcode. It's
not a barcode.
It's a QR code. A QR
Thank
code.
You. So it has a QR code. You put it on your camera. Bing bong, takes you to the web page. You go blip, pay for it. And I charged the Kona overnight. It was fairly low when I plugged it in, and it was full the next morning. It cost me money, but a bit more than it does when you charge at home, but not obscene amount more. And I could park there after, I think it was 7:30 at night, even though it was a residence parking. You're allowed to park there, and then you had to leave before 8 in the morning or something, which I was doing anyway. So I went, God, that worked. Yeah, that was the first time I'd actually used one for, rather than like when we're filming and we film it and plug in with it. Yes. It was a genuine use. And I mean, you just need it everywhere. That's the thing. I mean, I don't know if it's a solution amongst many, I suppose. But
well, here's the thing. In these interesting times, I think what we're all going to learn, which I think is going to be very helpful, is that you should embrace everything and consider everything and be totally open-minded. And therefore, whether it's charging with lampposts or wireless charging or swapping your batteries, or all these different things that are around, I think now people, well, I hope they will be much more inclined to just say, let's give it a go. Let's see how it works. And to just try things first. And if they find a place, if they work, I mean, take, for example, GridServe, when people are looking at electric forecourts. I put something up last week, I'm sure you did, talking about it. And you get lots of support, lots of encouragement, lots of people saying, well done, Mr. Toddington Harper and his merry crew. And you get lots of other people say, this is stupid. Why are they doing this? This won't work. Why don't they do this? That's wrong. And I kind of think, okay, listen, it's a broad church. We should always have, all those wide-ranging opinions. But I think more and more, it's like, let's just see how it works. Give it a go. Yeah. I don't know if it's going to work. But if Mr. Toddington Harper is prepared to spend many, many, many millions giving it a go, well, good on him, I say. Yeah,
absolutely, yeah. Well, I mean, on this particular instance, so I didn't realise there were that many, because I have seen them around, but there's 1,300 Ubitricity lamppost sockets in London.
I didn't know there were that many lampposts.
No, I didn't know. Well, also because it's very restricted to lampposts that are on the curbside rather than I think that's what it is. So you need, if you have a lamppost that's like next to the garden wall of the house it's in front of, that they can't use those, because then you've got a cable going right across the street. So where I park, the lamppost is right next to the car, basically. Right next to the curb. I don't know what the other side... I know what the curbside is. I don't know what the other side's called. Not the curbside.
Well, I just had a thought, though, Robbie, and I was telling you about my dogs earlier, what were we doing earlier today, dog walking and stuff. Yeah, I tell you what dogs do with lampposts, don't you?
Yeah, I know, yeah.
Will that impact on things? Is that going to be a problem?
I think it's got to be a truly enormous dog with a very powerful bladder, because they're not that low. Because our little terrier would have had real trouble getting that high, and our ridiculous lurcher that we used to have, even he wouldn't have reached that. And good point. I think, they've got, obviously they're waterproof. It is an unpleasant concept to think that a dog might wear it.
Sorry, I shouldn't have mentioned it. I withdraw.
There might be a Great Dane that you could walk past a Ubitricity lamppost.
Or if it was, say, somewhere around Regent's Park, and the keeper was taking maybe like one of the elephants or a giraffe for a walk. That could be
shocking.
That could just go horribly wrong.
But I think the thing that I've become, I think it's good that there is a focus on supplying charging infrastructure for people who don't have anywhere off the street to park the car, because I think there's going to be an increasing number of people who want to do it. I think the important thing I always say, because this is government statistics, it was a minister that told me this, is 40% of British households, I don't know how they work that out, so 40% of British households have nowhere off street to park a car, which means 60% do, which I've always argued means that currently 60% of the population of this country could have an electric car. And it makes it so much easier if you can do that. Well, you know that, but 40% can't.
Yeah, but as I say, I go back to the theme of let's have lots of different flavours. If people are prepared to spend some money, and have a go at something, we should all give them our encouragement and support and see how it all shakes down. But then increasingly, of course, look at these other countries where you've got, what do they call it? What's it? Not case study. No. What I'm thinking. When you describe something as a best example of something, what's it called?
Best case. Oh yeah, God, we're both as bad.
What's it called?
Best case scenario.
No, it's something else. Oh no,
there is a term
word for it. Yeah.
But I know what you mean. You mean a good example that other people could follow type of thing. Yeah.
Oh, what the hell is it? Anyway, the thing where you show something that's good and works. I think because we now know we're connected more than we realised in terms of the world. Getting examples of best practice. That's what it's called.
Best practice. That's it. Well
practice.
done.
So
best practice.
Getting the best practice example and trying to then put it in the context of your country. So we all cite, you do a lot, and I'm not blaming you, but you all cite Norway for everything EV. But Norway is a Nordic country, quite wealthy.
It's very specific, isn't it?
Lots of other things. Yeah. So we can't just say, well, that works in Norway, so it would work here. But if we kind of then consider, the best, those examples of best practice in Norway and other places, and then just blend it into what we do, the mix of our housing, who's got a drive and who hasn't, etc. Then I think we can accelerate. We can get these things done. But we should encourage people to embrace things and try stuff. And I think I'm feeling more and more. These last few weeks, and I guess for people in China and elsewhere, the last few months, give it a go. Try something. If there's a new way of doing something, let's see.
Yes. I mean, there was a wonderful tweet I saw today that is sort of, because I think it's quite nice. I think it's worth us trying not to mention the V word.
The thing. I call it the thing.
The thing, because it's so ubiquitous and it's so on everything. So, but this was a really beautiful tweet, and it was, the human race. Oh, we can't stop producing CO2. It's really difficult. It's going to take years to transition. We've got to make sure our industries survive. And then and it just says the planet. Have a virus. Practice.
I know. Listen,
and because what's happened in the last 10 days is miraculous. I mean, we've, in a sense, we've got an example at the moment of what the world could be like in 20 years' time, i.e., with a massive reduction in CO2 production and release. No flight, the fact that when I look up, I've got a very big sky I can see because we're out in the sticks. And there was a period earlier on today when it was very blue, not one vapour trail, not one. And we see a huge amount going to the south of us is, I guess, a flight path to the United States or somewhere, very busy flight path. And you generally look up on a really clear, it's got to be a really clear day, you will see 6 to 10 planes at any one time with all the vapour trails. And I'm not seeing any.
Say 2 words to you, Rob. You ready for these 2 words? You'll love these words. They sound lovely. Venetian dolphins.
Oh, yeah. Well, and the clear canals as well, which is slightly. I think that is slightly. There's been. I know there's been a lot of vehement comments about that, because if you have a really nice clean water canal and then you go along in a little speedboat with a propeller, not even fast, and it's quite shallow, as those canals are, it'll churn up all the mud and silt at the bottom, and it'll look murty, because they're just not. There's no boats going along them. That's why it's gone looking clean, as much as any other reason.
Right. Well, I was thinking.
I don't know about the dolphins. Have dolphins actually swum into Venice?
Yes, they now have dolphins in the Venetian lagoon. And what I'm hoping will happen is, if these dolphins have maybe escaped from a dolphinarium, what they're now going to do is they're going to go down the Grand Canal, and you're going to see them leap over the bridge of sighs, or whatever that bridge is called. You're going to see the people are going, what's that? Oh my! And this dolphin will come leaping over the bridge, and it'll be spectacular.
Yeah, I mean, but that is extraordinary that because it's it will have been maybe 10 days that there's been minimal boat traffic on any of the canals. Is it? I don't know. It may be 2 weeks. But the fact that if in that time dolphins come back into that part of the world, which I would imagine it's a fairly rare sight to see a dolphin in the middle of Venice.
Do you know what I've also had the image of now? I wish we hadn't talked about it. It was my fault for bringing it up.
Yeah.
You know what I haven't had for ages? A Viennetta. A Wall's Viennetta.
When you mention something, I've not thought about it. I would love to, because it's that, when you put your spoon through it and it cracks it. That's lovely. For listeners around the world who aren't aware of what a Viennetta is, you might worth Googling it. It is basically a gross sugar confection made by the Wall's ice cream company. But it's wonderful. Yeah, it's one of those things.
It's got nothing to do with Venice, but it just came into my head. It's got
very little to do with Venice or renewable energy and electric transport. But still, it's...
Yeah, it's got a V in it. It's got a V in it.
It has got a V in it. Now, the other one... I've been getting all these stories. It's really interesting because one of the things that always gets my goat, which I had one the other day on comments, I think, on YouTube, which was, these electric cars are rubbish because the batteries are dug. This is what the guy actually said: the batteries are dug up by children. So he couldn't even be bothered to kind of actually refer to cobalt, which is, and it's very true, there are kids that are mining cobalt, which is used in a very large variety of applications, including electric vehicles, but not exclusively. But, that argument, and then absolute total ignorance of what the oil industry is doing and how it controls the world we live in to such a huge extent. The lobbying power of the oil industry, how much subsidy they get, which it always gets my goat.
Anyway.
Yes,
I know what you're saying, and here's an interesting phenomenon. The more now that mining of minerals for batteries becomes a big focus, the interesting thing that's happening is that industry, which like many industries hasn't changed a lot over time, is getting more and more focused on driving efficiency, on finding innovation, on making things happen in a way in which it's better for everybody, better for the people making it in terms of a product and a service and, profit opportunity. There's always going to be that involved in it. But also in terms of its sustainability. So take, for example, lithium brine. So lithium brine, when you use a lot of water to produce it, and it works through evaporation. And at the moment, the process can seriously take many years, several years, to produce enough quality lithium, automotive grade lithium, through the lithium brine process. But there are people now working on different ways in which to increase and improve that, of course, because they want better productivity, they want to have a better business proposition. But all of this now we're seeing across all these supply chains and different industries, applications that are helping the efficiency of something, the effectiveness, the value of it, just improving stuff. And again, it's being very much engineered around the principles of circular economics, which are about sustainability, of course. They're about recycling, they're about reuse, because I might be wrong, but you might have been going to come into the issue of second life batteries, third life batteries.
Absolutely,
The fact that with a battery, with an electric vehicle, you've got something which sustains, which has a whole value chain to it, rather than squirt in a tank of diesel, slurp it all out, and a lot's lost in the inefficiency of the engine process, the combustion process. A lot we know comes out the tailpipe, and we've got a lot of things to focus on here now, and I think we've got some useful time over the coming weeks and a few months to maybe think about these things a bit more and
consider them.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's also, vitally important because, I have two reactions when someone says, essentially a fairly ignorant thing, as in they couldn't have made that comment on YouTube without having access to cobalt, which is in the battery of the device they were using to make the comment. There's always that element to it. But also the fact that the flip side of that, of me being annoyed at that, is it's really important that we maintain pressure and critical scrutiny of mining companies, of mineral extraction companies, of that whole process, so that they don't follow in the footsteps of the oil industry, who have a sort of 120-year history that is not exactly benign, a little bit dodgy here and there, and extremely murderously vile in some instances. It's a really, when I have read about the history of the oil industry, it's pretty brutal. I mean, it was often, because it was such an essential resource, often governments were involved in the kind of corruption and the bribery and the destruction of foreign governments that had oil. I mean, the curse of having oil in your land is pretty obvious. If you see countries, small, poor, developing countries that don't have oil, fairly stable. Ones that do have oil, massive corruption, massive political instability, civil war, strife, starvation. It's not a good thing to have.
Yeah, and I think the origin, the timeline for the story of oil, of course, predates much of what we've got now, which is the kind of communication tools, the ubiquitous kind of investigation and observation of things that makes it pretty forensic, where if you're doing something, you've got to do it right. You won't get away with hoodwinking people. So I think that the mining industry, given that it's coming to the fore very much in terms of renewable energy, electric vehicles, etc., can't perhaps go on, even if it wanted to, go on any kind of journey of kind of subterfuge and all sorts of things that aren't appropriate. And of course, your wife's home country, Australia, is critical in this. If you look at Australia and Chile in particular, and in truth, Rob, there's only kind of, I think it's 6 major companies around the world that are the dominant forces. Well, they're the only ones really involved in lithium mining. Right. So I'm not saying, therefore, it's dead easy to spot what they're doing and make sure they're doing it right, but they are much more accountable. And because of the way social media and other things works these days, unlike in the history of the origin of oil, they have to do it ethically, as they have to do it sustainably, because if we're all kind of reasonably sensible grown-ups, there is no point berating one industry, i.e. the oil and gas industry, only to replace it with another industry, the mining industry. And
just as bad.
Well, what's the point of that? So we've got to be true to ourselves and the principle of what we're trying to achieve as much as anything. So to be frank with you, when sometimes people take a pop at mining and say a few of these things, I kind of think, you've got a bit of a point there. And I think
absolutely, yeah. I mean, I think the thing is that we should absolutely be critical of it, because we're all implicated. Even someone who drives a turbocharged V8 petrol engine car is implicated because they've got a phone or they've got some electronics in their life. All those things contain cobalt, so we're all implicated in cobalt. And also, oil refining uses cobalt to remove sulfur from petrol and diesel. So that it's a commonly used product that is, by the curse of the world, most of it is in one extremely unstable, very undemocratic country that's got the word democratic in its title. It's just very peculiar. But I mean, I think what I think it's I want to do, just because I'm like that, is occasionally turn the focus on the oil industry, because the more I learn about the oil industry, the more fascinating it is. It's a fascinating industry, and it's vitally important. It's not that I just think I'm not living in some airy, fairy, tree-hugging, libtard tower of privilege saying oil companies are awful. We really need them. We're massively reliant on oil as a product.
We are, and can we talk about Formula One and Formula E for a bit? Because this is where I think there's an opportunity and something potentially interesting happening,
right?
And maybe very important. Obviously, Formula One is predicated on the oil industry. We know that it's the pinnacle of combustion engine vehicle technology. It's the pinnacle of lightweighting, aerodynamics, a whole host of brilliant things in engineering, which the cleverest minds on the planet apply themselves to, and good on them for now working on dealing with the thing in terms of what they're building in terms of all these respirators and stuff. So that just shows these are clever people. if you look at the blend now of the audience for Formula One or Formula E, if you look at where I think the sponsorship seems to be drifting over towards Formula E.
Right.
If we look at the fact that we've got all the major manufacturers now in Formula E, and you have people like Shell sponsoring, I think it's Mahindra. And the curious thing for me, Rob, and I live in Brackley, by the way, where the Mercedes Formula One team is based. And Silverstone is just up the road.
Just down the road, yeah.
So, I'm very focused on Formula One. I like motorsport, and I will not... please don't cut me off when I tell you this. I love going to
But I grew up with it,
Silverstone.
absolutely. I'm the same. No, I'm the same.
Well, one of my favourite motorsport meetings is the classic car meeting at Silverstone. And I think motorsport has an important place, even with, dare I say it, combustion engine vehicles, when they're being shown as racing vehicles and they're a spectacle and they're all about our heritage, wonderful heritage, particularly in this country. And we should celebrate that. And I wouldn't want people to think that people like you or myself or others who are, electric vehicle advocates want to just stamp on, like with a big foot, the whole...
Yeah.
internal combustion engine thing, because like I say, I think now this kind of very interesting time between Formula One and Formula E, we're seeing some of those oil companies trying to rework what they do and redefine what they do, and I think if you look at, say, someone like Petronas, so Petronas support Mercedes in their Formula One proposition.
Yes.
But at
and
the
Petronas,
moment,
they're a petrol company I think of as Italian, but I'm probably wrong.
No,
or
they're
Spanish.
Malaysian.
I don't know. They're Malaysian, are they? All right.
Yeah,
That shows how wrong I was. Yeah.
Petronas Towers, the tallest building in the world?
Oh, right. Yes, of course. I've never even made that connection. Duh.
Well, that's it, Rob. But so at the moment, interestingly enough, they don't sponsor Formula E, the Mercedes Formula E team, and
right.
But I know a little bit about what they're doing, and one of their divisions, which is to do with fluid, technology, not so much oil, but
right.
lubricant, fluid stuff, etc. They're working hard and getting more and more involved in some of the fluid technology in and around electric vehicles, which particularly
right.
in batteries, in terms of cooling, is pretty important. Is pretty fundamental. And Shell, I don't want to berate one oil company against another, or necessarily praise one too much than another. But a company like Shell, I think, are starting to show a bit of a shift towards redefining what they do, and that's going to take time. But I do think one of the great things that Formula E has been doing is it really has been challenging Formula One a lot. And let me tell you this. Lewis Hamilton, who is undoubtedly, next to Mr. Schumacher, greatest driver of his generation, he is a real advocate and a champion within the FIA and within Formula One and within Mercedes to get on with it, to get on with getting these things improved and shifted. As to where that ends up, I'm not sure, because how sustainable Formula One is, say, 20 years hence or 10 years hence without R&D production of the internal combustion engine, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But I just find it a fascinating moment in time, and especially given I live near Silverstone and I live in the town of Brackley, which has, that amazing...
Such a long
history.
amazing
factory, the Formula One factory.
Oh, God, they're incredible.
Just around the corner, yeah.
So which one is it in Brackley? Because I went to Red Bull. That's Mercedes. Wow, yeah.
Petronas Mercedes.
But it's amazing, though, that Mercedes Formula One team headquarters where they build the car, Mercedes... the oldest, most established German car company, the oldest car company, Mercedes, is in Brackley. It's not in Munich or in Baden-Baden. It's extraordinary.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, they've got two. They've got the place in Brackley. Then there's a facility in Brixworth. So
right, which is just up the road. It's not. Yeah, it's not Brixworth in Germany. It's Brixworth in Northamptonshire.
No, not Brixworth in the Black Forest. No, Brixworth. This is Brixworth. No Black Forest anywhere near it. But But I think what's interesting from what I understand, and I don't get told things in confidence because they wouldn't do that for me because they know I tell people. But I think the Formula One and Formula E teams are working quite closely together because, when it comes to lightweight, efficiency, improvements in all sorts of things, there's lots of complementary technologies there, which is good for both series, I think.
But I mean, also, I think that change, which I was sort of aware of last year, was that, when I first got involved I did some telly stuff for old style broadcasting about Formula E before the series started. Did interview the people who developed the batteries and the motors and all that stuff. But that at that stage they had to have 2 cars for each driver, and they could do each car could do half a race each. And it was impressive sort of leap in technology. But the fact that I think it took them 4 years, before they could then have a car that would do, that would do the whole race with one battery. I mean, it doesn't have to stop.
Well,
it's amazing.
Here's the thing, Mr. Llewellyn. Sorry, I slightly interrupted you then. But
no, that's good. No, because I was waffling.
No, you weren't. No, you weren't. And you were saying something very interesting, because here's something I'm going to share with you at some point. I have a little video clip that I recorded of you before the start of season 1 when we were over watching the testing, and I came up to you and sort of thrust this little camera right into your face, and I'm not a cameraman. It was like, when you look at the video, you think, what was I doing? It's just like right in your face. And I said, Mr. Llewellyn, do you think this is going to be a success? Do you think Formula E is going to work? There are plenty of people who said it hasn't got a chance. Yeah. And you said that the timing of it was right. It kind of came at this point of other things going on. I'll send it to you because you can have a look. It'll be embarrassing. Yeah. No, it's not embarrassing because you were spot on. What you said is what has happened. Funnily enough, by the way, I'm doing. I guess we all are now. Lots of stuff online. And next Tuesday and Wednesday, I'm doing a smarter mobility webinar with loads of people. I mean, it's crazy. We've got it's mad, really. We've got 2 consecutive days with 5 hours of content on each day, and it's all through live links and connections fed through into Dubai. Nikki Shields is going to be co-presenting it with a bloke called Roger Atkins. I don't know what he does.
I've heard he's very good. I've heard good reports.
No, I've heard all sorts about him. He's a charlatan. And Ben Pullen, and it's from that sustainable city in Dubai. Now, you've been amazing, there, haven't you?
Yeah, it's an amazing place. Absolutely extraordinary place. Yeah.
So have you got any? As I'm going to be talking to Nikki then next week for 10 hours. Yeah. Have you got any questions? Because she's been part of that.
She knows Formula E backwards.
Yes. You got any questions for her? I mean, do you know her? Have you met Nikki?
Yeah, I do know. I know Nikki very well. Yeah, no, because we did. In fact, the telly stuff I did was with her. So we did for ITV. So I think they wanted another very handsome young man whose name now escapes me. And strangely enough, they stuck with the handsome young man and Nikki, and they let the doddery old fool wander off on his own. So I didn't, but I did. I was very happy. I only wanted to do that little bit.
Yeah, but Nikki is a scientist, of course. I know who the chap was. Mark Priestley.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, and the reason, but in fairness, the reason why they picked Mark Priestley was he's an ex-Formula One, funnily enough, Formula One engineer, a very talented chap, and so he knows what he's talking about with much of what a Formula E car is in terms of chassis and lightweighting and structures and all that sort of stuff.
No, the right people got those jobs. I mean, I didn't want to. It was because I'm now trying to remember the name of the lovely lad that does the commentary on Formula E, because I worked with him as well on that, and I can't remember his name. He's got the classic commentator's voice.
Yes, I know who perfect. You mean, and oh God,
and I can't remember his name.
I really like him as well. I can't remember.
Yeah, he's a lovely guy. He's a very sweet man, and I'm deeply, deeply ashamed I can't remember his name. So hopefully he doesn't listen to the Fully Charged Show podcast. Let's hope not. But getting back to this is the thing I really wanted to ponder, is that because of the current global situation, the one thing that I have picked up on is the monstrous drop in the oil price, which is weird because it's sort of counterintuitive. You think if there's a lot of stress and everything, the price would go up, but it's exactly the opposite. It's fallen through the floor. So I don't know whether, I think it's sub $20 a barrel at the moment, isn't it? Which is incredibly low.
Yes, but it happened at the same time that there's a bit of a spat between Saudi Arabia and Russia. So you kind of got two converging, things to this. The dynamics to it are both the global impact of the thing and an approach from the Saudis to manage and manipulate the oil price downwards in order to, it's conjecture. I'm not an expert in oil and all the rest of it, but if the marginal cost of a lot of production of oil is, for example, $50 a barrel, if you push it, well below that price for a period of time, you put out of business some of your competitors.
Of
Sounds ruthless and brutal.
I think it is ruthless and brutal.
None of us would ever do it, would we? But it's called life. It's called business. It's called what happens sometimes. So I think this has coincided with the timing of the thing going on as well.
Yes, the thing. Yeah, no, I think it has. I think it's been aided and abetted by the thing. I think you're right. It wasn't started by the thing, but it's certainly been prolonged. And because what the article I was referring to, which is in Vice, was about the fact that we're not. The openings.
What did you say?
It was in Vice. As in
What's that?
The Vice motherboard, the magazine. I don't know what to call it. Vice.com.
That sounded sounded a bit dodgy, Rob.
I would love to tell you the story of a very old mate of mine who sadly passed away, who went out with a woman who was in the London Vice squad, because we did half get some brilliant stories from her. She was great. Very funny, quite frightening woman. You wouldn't want to cross her, but you were very glad she was on our side.
Yes. By the way,
tough.
I've just had a text complaining that both of us are ignorant and we don't know anything from Jack Nichols, who is the lead commentator. And, we're down.
I knew he'd be listening.
Yeah,
he'd be listening on the live feed that we forgot to switch on.
Yeah. I bumped into Jack Nichols a few times, and I just googled it.
Thank you.
He's a lovely chap. He has a wonderful voice, and
hasn't he got perfect? Yeah.
Oh, he's so good at that job. Yeah,
I know. He's brilliant at it. Yeah. No, he's very good.
So we didn't forget his name.
Jack Nichols. No, I knew it was that. I knew it was that. But no, I think what's intriguing is the fact that, for instance, Canadian tar sands, that's completely closed down because it costs way more than $20 a barrel to produce that filth. Yeah. I think we can legitimately be critical across the board of the notion of extracting oil from tar sands. I think it's just a bad idea. I'm going to stick to my guns on that one. But also fracking. So one of the reasons that we had a lot of hoo-ha about fracking in the UK last year was because the government said, frack on, go for it, a bit like Trump, and then they've stopped. And they've stopped. Now we understand, they stopped initially because there was just slightly too many earthquakes in an area that never has earthquakes. But they're also stopping now because it's not economically viable. So that, I think, is an intriguing thing. But what I'm wondering about is, will the global supply be affected by the thing? Because I just thought that the other day.
Undoubtedly, but I don't think. I'm not possessed of the knowledge and ability to sort of really consider how that will be. But it's bound to be.
Anyway, that's enough. It's quite an interesting. I'll put links to all these stories. There's oil everywhere, too costly to drill. I just thought that was an interesting thing, and they're predicting a massive crash in the oil industry, which I'm not sure how. I don't know. It's a long article, but it's interesting. But that's enough of that one. Let's move on. Oh, I am excited about this because now, who did I talk to? Someone who knew stuff. Who was talking about it? Not the other day when we had our conference. There was someone else I've spoken to recently who basically was raving about hydrogen fuel cells for trucks and large commercial vehicles, buses and things. Right. Which has always struck me as being a much better idea because they have had some big breakthroughs in 100 megawatt. Is it 100? No, 100 kilowatt. Some kilowatts. What do they call it? How many? 100 kilowatts. So 100 kilowatt fuel cells can be if they're big and heavy, they can be quite cheap. In fact, very cheap to make. And that's what changes the whole hydrogen fuel cell thing, because that's always been my argument, is that to make it for a car, it's got to be small and lightweight, and that makes them very expensive. And, needing a lot of rare earth metals and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. But I think, Rob, with all this, it goes back to my kind of thought earlier about embracing change and looking for opportunity. When I was at Ricardo, amazingly, I went and worked at a company called Ricardo, which is a consulting engineering firm in the UK, long established, been around for over 100 years. Why I got a job there, I still can't quite fathom. And I managed to last for 4 years nearly, which is extraordinary because I knew nothing. But what I learnt there from being in the company of very smart people, lots of engineers, physicists, scientists, clever people, was a certain phrase which comes to mind in what we're talking about now with hydrogen, which is application specific. Look for the application-specific technologies. Don't dismiss anything out of hand.
Exactly.
Because it's like in a particular, in a specific application, does this work technically? Does it work operationally? And does it work financially? And if you can tick those boxes, or you can only tick one or two of them, and the one box you can't tick, you then analyse it and refine what it is that's still a challenge, whether it's the cost of materials or whether it's the weight or whatever it is. Then if there's one thing I learned from being in the proximity of clever engineers, they love problems. They love things where people say that doesn't work, because they want to understand why it doesn't work and try and make it work. So I think you're absolutely right. I think to a certain extent the world has been a bit too fixated on batteries. Almost as though there's a kind of, and I've said this to people before, like a battery mafia. If you dare mention fuel cells, because once Elon Musk said the term full cells, and so everyone says, oh, well, there you are, then they're rubbish because Elon said that thing. It's not very intelligent, or possibly not very intelligent sort of stance to take. Big things and things where it's the application is specific.
And suits them, absolutely.
How it works. It's a good thing.
Because because it's just there's clearly some. So I've not even heard of this company, Hyzon Motors, a hydrogen vehicle company focused on heavy duty fuel cell vehicles. So I can sort of get that. You think when you see the capacity of the batteries in the Tesla semis. In the big trucks that Tesla developed. I mean, they are, we're talking up to 1,000 kilowatt hours. It's just, you go, that's just kind of crazy. And then there's another company in America, isn't there? Nikola Trucks, which I have heard of, who are doing hydrogen, they'll all be hybrids, effectively. They'll be hydrogen fuel cell with big battery packs. I think that will be the thing.
And
so it is both, which I love, the fact that it's both.
Again, going back into the past, because for us, Rob, we're lucky. There's lots of past for us to go back into.
There is quite a lot.
I was lucky enough to be on a video thing about 10, 11 years ago, 12 years ago, where Hugo Spowers from River Simple. He's a
lovely
really smart
Hugo,
guy,
amazing guy,
and the fellow who was running Intelligent Energy. Both of them basically said the same thing, which is. Again, going back to application-specific propositions, that we can blend fuel cells with batteries. It doesn't have to be one thing or another.
No.
If you can get it to do the job at the right price and come with a good, benign consequence, then that's what you should do.
Yeah.
And I think that's absolutely. And they were talking about that in some detail. Henry Winand, that's the fella. He was the managing director of Intelligent Energy, and I thought at the time, these guys know what they're talking about. These are engineers; they know stuff. And isn't it funny that Nikola is the fuel cell truck business? Nikola. And then Tesla is the battery electric car thing. I like that. I like a bit of sense of humour to these things, Rob. We need a good sense of humour right now.
We do. If anything we can do for a little bit of a laugh is very, very handy at the moment. Yes. I'm just looking at Hyzon Motors' website. I mean, they're actually producing hydrogen fuel cell trucks now. I think the buses. 9, 12 and 18 metre city buses with hydrogen fuel cells. Vans and minibuses, it's amazing how now your eyes get trained to this. So the bus is a real bus on a street going along. The van and the minibus is a beautifully rendered Photoshop thing, you know. So I think they're probably not making those yet, but I've never heard. I'm trying to work out where they are. I've never heard of. Have you heard of Hyzon? Hyzon?
No, if I'm honest.
No. That's the first time I've come across them. So I don't. America. Okay. Oh, well, they're incorporated in the USA. Okay, that's as near as I can get at the moment. But no, I mean, I think that is, because when you look at the delivery stuff, and we're going to do we're actually doing a show about that next week, about local deliveries, which is clearly it's a massive thing at the moment, and I think it's going to stay a massive thing. Those are the things that are just perfect for electric delivery vans. I mean, it's going to make such a difference. That put the post office, all the DHLs, all the, the Amazon deliveries. It's crazy that they're still using diesel this time. Now,
it is nuts, and my history, Rob, and we go back to Modec, all those years ago, back in 2007, it was sad that we didn't manage to sustain that particular proposition, but seeing Rivian progress as they are with Amazon. And seeing Charge Engineering and all that they're doing, that and Arrival, that they're doing with UPS, it fills me with joy. It really does. Can I briefly mention something? And I'm going to declare vested interest. Can we do that? Is there a form I have to fill in?
Also, just while I remember, I want you to quickly, not now, but explain what Modec was. But we'll do the other thing first, because a lot of people may not have heard of Modec.
Okay, if I talk about something and there's vested interest, do I have to fill in a form before I tell you about it, or should I just
I will design a very complex form for you to fill in. Yeah.
So, wireless charging, high power wireless charging. So, why am I a fan of this? Well, because I think for high utilisation vehicles, particularly things like buses, taxis, and some of the vans we're just talking about, if you can extend the range by way of charging the vehicle up a little and often, you can run it with a smaller battery. And it can still do its job. So this challenge of where do we get all the raw materials from, and so on and so on and so forth, I genuinely, and I still think that we're going to see the wireless charge proposition slowly but surely emerge, particularly for buses initially, I think, where you can turn a 160 mile battery in a bus into a 240 mile bus, but the same battery, by putting wireless charge points at several stops on the way. And over time, they can't, they won't just be used for the bus. Anyone can go and pick the stuff up. So you just need the receiver on your vehicle, and you can then accept to charge wirelessly. And I do a bit of work. I help a company in America called Momentum Dynamics. So that's why I wanted to say there's vested interest. I'm saying this as an advocate for the technology, and I'm referencing that particular company, but I do some work for them. So I don't want anyone to think I'm just, anything other than full disclosure. I think that's what it's called. Full disclosure.
Yeah, full disclosure is fine. That's all good. It's a smaller form to fill in. That's only 37 pages as opposed to 148 for the other one. But no, that's good. I mean, I think it's very fair that you've explained that. But I mean, and also that is one of those. It's one of those technologies that I think will come back. So there's some things that you see. You've been through the same thing as I have, where you'll see something and go to a press launch and it's like, oh my God, look at that! It's wireless charging. But when I think how long ago that was, it was like 8 years ago that I did a show about wireless charging and saw a car charging wirelessly in park. I think it was a early BMW i3 that as you moved it forward, it went beep and it started charging without any wires. Brilliant. But then nothing happens for a few years and you think, oh, well, that was a good idea, but it didn't work. Like battery swapping. After Better Place, you think battery swapping, that is dead. No one's ever going to do battery swapping until suddenly NIO start doing battery swapping effectively and economically in China, and you go, oh, right, someone's working it out. Those things tend to come back. And I think you're right about, it makes so much sense and everyone would appreciate it. If someone was to build, say, a multi-storey car park with 200, induction charge points in the floor when they built it, and you had an induction charge receiver on your car, would you use that car park? I think you probably would.
Yes. Well, just to finish off on this, in the summer, so it might, of course, be a little bit delayed now by the thing. But the launch date was August, so that might get pushed into September, October, I guess. But in Oslo, there will be 20 electric taxis that will be charged up wirelessly in the city centre of Oslo as part of a demonstration programme. And watch this space, because the announcement on what electric car this is being put on will... Oh, yes. So... Oh, no. Don't say anything. I mustn't...
Don't say it, Roger.
No, it's okay. We can keep that in. I haven't said who it is, but there's going to be an announcement, and we're really excited about it.
Brilliant!
And I might tell you 30 seconds before everybody else knows. Rob, how about that?
Yes, okay, that's good. Thank you. And I mean, do you think? I mean, I don't know anything about the technology, how the technology is developed, but has it become smaller, lighter, cheaper? You know, those three critical things, right?
Yes, it's equal to or cheaper than high power charging if you're whacking in 50 kilowatt charge points, at a location. And
so it would be a cheaper alternative to a rapid charger. Wow, because they are expensive.
Right.
That's true.
Yeah. Well, exactly. This is the thing. In all of these ideas that people come out with, it's got to tick all the boxes. You've got to have it do the job. It's got to be, sustainable, ever more so these days. And there's got to be a business case for it. And if there isn't, then it might be great. It might be a lovely idea, but it isn't going to work because you won't get investment for it, and you won't get people buy it and use it. So the proof of the pudding is about to be in the demonstration, and I think then we could get a bit excited about it. But I mustn't say any more, otherwise I'll have to self-isolate myself even more than I already have.
Well, there's one last story I want to do, just because I'm intrigued by this, and I don't quite know. I'm just wondering whether you have a better grasp of it than I do, which is about the it's just this funny video, and it's in German, but it's a guy in Germany outside Stuttgart, which is where the Volkswagen ID.3 is built. Leipzig, sorry, not Stuttgart, Leipzig. And he just came across a car park with thousands of them, ready-made, brand new, twinkly new Volkswagen ID.3s, which is not far, and they're not being released. There was talk of them being released by this time. Now, obviously, there's lots of reasons why they haven't been released now, because of the thing in particular. But there's a software. They've got a software problem with the car. Right? I don't even know what that means. They've clearly built it. The pictures are extraordinary. I mean, they really are. There's probably, I don't know, a few thousand ID.3s in a car park, which is a lot of investment for Volkswagen, and they're not selling them, or they're not shifting them yet. But have you heard anything about that? Do you know anything about that? What the issue is? No,
not really.
Right.
I only saw the update to say there'd been a software issue and a glitch, which will basically mean something to do with the engine. Not the engine management system. Something to do with, I guess, that I would imagine the battery. It'll be something to do with the BMS. I wouldn't be surprised to hear, but. This is a huge company, let's be honest. Volkswagen have got so many people that they can put on a problem and get on with it and get it fixed. So, look, I think the current situation with the thing, ironically, in certain situations, will be helpful. So they've now kind of bought themselves a bit of time to sort out this glitch. And then once the thing, moves away, that they're ready to rock and roll. So, there you go. Sometimes these things help people.
Right, yes, no, absolutely. I mean, I think it's quite a funny story because the guy that was doing it, that filmed it, actually got arrested and fined. I think he kind of got into the car park, which was technically kind of fenced off. But it's clearly not in a kind of remote rural area. In the background of the picture, you see loads of houses. So it's not like out in the, out just, I would think, suburban Leipzig or somewhere. But
yes.
But it is, because I still have a hankering. I mean, I think it was really when I heard about the top of the range model, and I know battery size is unnecessary, but if you could, the fact that you could get a VW ID.3 with a 77 kilowatt hour battery, so a small, relatively compact 5-door hatchback, what I call a sensibly sized car with a 77 kilowatt hour battery, that, they're looking at 350 plus miles range. It's kind of, I found it attractive.
I'm going to self-isolate and look at one. But you've been in an ID3.
Yeah, no, I drove it. I mean, it's so frustrating because when you drive it like that, I've driven a few cars out there that are I-Pace. The first time I drove an I-Pace, you can't see anything inside the car. It's all covered in carpeting and. So I saw there was a little window cut in it, so I could see my speed. That was the only thing I could see. So none of the controls or the fascia, and then the whole of the outside was covered with so many bits of cardboard and weird, stickers that sort of disguised the shape of it. But I could tell that it looked roughly like the images of the finished thing. But what is amazing, it is just. As soon as I got, of course it's Volkswagen. They've been doing this for decades. They're really good at it. Because I had a lot of Golfs. I realise I was a Golf. I was, loyal to the Golf brand, if you like.
Yes.
So I think I had 4 or 5 Golfs in a row because they just didn't break. They were really good. They were really reliable. They were solid. They didn't rattle. Things didn't fall off. They were good. I would say there's no question. This is better than a Golf. So it's not as good as, it's better than. And
talk about not break or things drop off. Do you remember that TV advert where I think it was Burt Quo, I can't remember his name. He would be standing in this white studio and they dropped a car from on high and it like plonked on the floor just to show that, bits don't fall off.
That's right. I forgot about that advert.
That was a Golf. Yeah, it would suddenly
was a Golf.
It would like fall out the sky from behind him and bang, and he wouldn't flinch, and he'd say something about it. I can't remember what
very
what
strong
the phrase
car
was.
But I mean, it was because it would have had to have been dropped. And I mean, I'm sort of thinking of how studios work. You could angle the camera a bit, but it was basically him at one side with just a white space behind him.
Yes,
and then this car would just drop into it.
But
it's got to be like, I think 10 plus feet. Yeah, and it used to bounce and it made a big loud noise, and you would see stuff on the floor underneath, but I think it was sort of oil. I mean, I think there are outtakes, and I bet they're on YouTube, where the windscreen popped out. So they would drop it and the windscreen would just fly out, but it didn't break. It would just kind of wobble about on the bonnet. It would just sort of flop because the pressure on it would have been enormous. I mean, because I would imagine those cars were slightly damaged, even if, you beefed up the suspension or whatever they did to it, But it was it was very impressive. If I get a VW ID3 ever, or a press car, I promise Volkswagen I won't drop it to try and recreate that. Because I think that would be bad. But yeah, no, I'm certainly looking forward to seeing them and doing a longer test drive. Because I mean, I drove it I was probably 150 miles that day.
It was in South Africa, wasn't it?
In South Africa, yeah. So we went a long way in it, and it was. That's the thing. I couldn't see the range. I could see nothing of. I couldn't see the battery. Readouts. So I had no idea. Didn't know how far we went, and I didn't know. But we were driving for a long time. We went along this amazing coast road near Cape Town. It was extraordinary. So
is anyone really going to listen to this, Robert?
I think some people do, and I'm hoping I'm hoping that we gave them some useful information. Quickly do Modec. Just explain what Modec was, because I saw one the other day. They're still in use. I saw a UPS Modec truck still being used.
Modec was a UK startup which began in 2006. It was formed by the ex-chairman of London Taxis, Mr. Jamie Borrick, or Lord Borrick as he is now. Right. It was a 5.5 ton full electric vehicle. It had, to begin with, a big old 85 kilowatt hour battery, which was sodium nickel chloride. It was called a Zebra battery. And then it subsequently had a 55 kilowatt battery, which was LiFePO4, lithium iron phosphate. Right. And they were sold in a small number, but, reasonably significant, to UPS, to FedEx, and to Tesco in the UK.
Right.
There was a big order for about 100 of them with a company in France. And we soldiered on through. The unfortunate timing of it all was the banking crisis of 2008.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
So, the whole world went a little bit pear-shaped. We know what that feels like, don't we?
Yeah, we've just had a reminder. Yeah, we're having a reminder now.
Yes, it looked great. The guy who designed the cab was a guy called James Dex, and he was a big Star Wars fan, and he made the cab, the front of the cab, look like a Imperial Stormtrooper's helmet.
It did. I didn't know that? Wow, because
Yes.
I drove one from London to Brighton. It was brilliant.
You did. I remember
Brighton to
meeting
London,
you
Brighton to
in
London,
Trafalgar Square, Rob.
Trafalgar Square, that's right.
Yeah. So it was an early stage, way ahead of its time kind of proposition, similar to the kind of Arrival proposition and Rivian, but just not as sophisticated, ahead of its time, and caught a cold around the financial crisis.
But it's intriguing that there's still, I saw one the last time I was in London a couple of weeks ago. It pulled up by the sidewalk where I was walking. Pavement, the edge of the street.
The lamppost area.
The lamppost area, and a guy what I remember is when I drove it, how wonderful it was to be in the driver's seat, and then you stop and you undo your seatbelt and you stand up straight, because the roof was high enough in the driver's cab for you to stand up, wasn't it? It was brilliant. You don't have to sort of crouch down and be all awkward.
Yeah,
really good.
You could walk out the back of it. It kind of, didn't have doors in the cab. The doors were in the back of the kind of chassis.
Really good.
There was so many wonderful people at that company. The engineering team were fantastic. The people who worked in supply chain, the finance team. It was like a little family. And when it kind of, fell over and failed, I can't tell you how sad, I was and everybody there, because we were really passionate about it. But
it's fascinating as well to think of how there's another good example of how the technology's developed. So that had an 85 kilowatt hour battery, which was the same capacity as my first Tesla, which was an 85 kilowatt Model S. And yet the battery size and weight in that Model S would be, I would guess, considerably less than the battery size and weight in the first Modec.
Well, I mean, yes, the fundamental thing, Rob, above all else, though, was bear in mind this is 2007. I think the cost of a kilowatt hour, and I'm approximating given the cost of the pack, would have been about $1,200 or $1,300 a kilowatt hour,
more.
And it's now like 100, isn't it? We've come down to such a scale, to enable some of this mass adoption that's now happening. I mean, the battery pack in the Modec was, the battery itself was like about £25,000.
Wow, yeah. God, it's extraordinary, isn't it? Yeah. So, yes, yeah. Because, I mean, I think that was the thing we mentioned the other day in our conference. I mean, it's certainly an area that I'm fascinated by how rapidly this will evolve. I think that's where we'll see the biggest change. I think you've said this as well, that in the kind of delivery, in the light van, taxi, the commercial vehicle world will the big companies will go, hang on a minute, we're spending how much are we spending a year on fuel? We can stop doing that. We can make most of our own fuel on our depot, certainly through the summer, and it's a lot cheaper to run them. The economics of it are going to make sense in the next 18 months by a huge degree, I think. Well,
before we finish, can I make a confession? I stole something off you, Rob, when I came to film something with you a couple of years ago. Can I confess? No, I'll tell you what it was. We were having a chat, and I think it was on camera, so I can't deny it. And you said eco, and you said, eco, that's in economic, isn't it? And he said,
oh, that's right,
yeah, and so I think this is the kind of line of travel for a lot of companies now, businesses, whether they're buying stuff or making stuff, is to see the eco within the economic. In other words, you're doing things because it's good for the business, and it's good for the planet and good for people. And I think we're at that inflection point now where the choice for a lot of things which are better for the environment, better for air quality, better for CO2, are actually now equally economic propositions as well, not just eco propositions. So thanks for telling me that, because I use it a lot, and I colour in the ECO bit as eco and put it in things and sort of say, oh look, what a coincidence! Look how clever I am spotting that. But it was you did it. I nicked it.
But I don't. I'm sure I wasn't the first person to do it, and also. The sad truth is I forgot that I did it, so I haven't used it since.
I shouldn't have said it now.
Shouldn't have reminded me, and I can't try and use that. But just one last thing I want to say, because I think this is really critical to this, is the a level of opposition to a new Ocado delivery department, or what do you call it, Ocado distribution centre that's being built in London. So for overseas listeners, Ocado is a big company in the UK that delivers groceries. And it was, I think it was probably one of the first ones, certainly a very early one.
Yes, it was.
And they're a slightly upmarket, aren't they? They're kind of a bit posh because it's sort of Waitrose and it's nice. You have very nice avocados in a little cardboard thing.
Yes, Waitrose is where they have people panic buy champagne.
Yes.
Not toilet rolls.
No. They've already got the toilet rolls. They're panic buying champagne and caviar. No, not quite. But it's certainly an upmarket brand. So they're opening this massive new distribution centre right in the middle of northeast London. And it will employ a lot of people. So I'm sure they got a lot of support from their local council and all that sort of stuff. And there's a road that goes in from the main street outside, and there's a place where all the vans will come in and reverse up to the thing, and then they go out on their deliveries. And that road is right next to a primary school playground. And it was instantly, those plans were revealed. I don't think they've actually started building this yet. Instantly that was real. All the parents at that school freaked out. Now, the fact that they knew to freak out, because what's going to be right the other side of this little fence where their kids are playing in the playground is a load of diesel vans with the engines ticking over as they move forward slowly to go and get the pickups.
That's madness.
Stuff. And it's so profoundly wrong. But what's amazing is the ignorance of the people developing the site, not even thinking about that, because it's never been a problem. People have been using diesel vans for decades. What's the big deal? And now it's a problem. And I think that is where we'll see the big change. And so I bet there's people in Ocado now, and I met the boss. I interviewed the boss because I did a program about how they do their distribution years ago. And I bet he bought one of the first Tesla Roadsters. He was really into it. I mean, he had a few quid. You know the picture of Boris Johnson and David Cameron and a lot of posh kids at Oxford who are members of the Bullingdon Club.
The Bullingdon Club, yes.
Yeah, so this guy was in that. The guy who set up Ocado was in the Bullingdon Club. But now I understand why, because at that time I'd never heard of it. I didn't know what it was. He said, but I wasn't really involved. I barely ever went. which is the thing you need to say now with that.
I've got another confession, Rob. I was at the Bullingdon Club.
Oh.
Yeah, I used to work in the toilets cleaning the people's shoes when they came in. I had a little selection of polishes and brushes, and I'd polish his shoes.
Are you serious? Is that true?
No, I made that up. I don't know why I did, but I just did.
It was good. I liked it. Well, that's because I can say I was at Oxford University in the early 1970s, because I was physically in the university, but I was genuinely working in the kitchens. So I was a kitchen hand at Brasenose College in Oxford.
Wow.
So, I did attend. So I'd have said that. And I did say it when I did a talk at the Oxford Union many years ago. And I said I used to do. And afterwards, a very posh, your kid came up to me and said, I'd never had you down as a Brasenose man. So he hadn't quite heard that he could not register, because I'd said I was at Brasenose in 1972, which is true. But I don't think he kind of registered that I said, but I was working in the kitchens making toast. That bit didn't sink in. Yeah. Anyway, we've waffled. Oh God, let me look at the time. How long have we waffled for?
Too long. It's been days.
But it is. It's actually been 2 days. I've lost track of my thing. I can't even find it. 1 hour and 10 minutes. Oh, not critically horrendous. Thanks so much, Roger. That is brilliant. You've done sterling work and been wonderful, entertaining. You have been full of entertainment and information, which is all we can ask for.
I found it a bit of therapy, to be honest with you. I feel like we've been in a kind of therapy booth of some description.
We need all the therapy we can get.
We do. And I'm really glad that I think you might have accidentally said the word once, but the rest of the time we only talked about it as the thing. Because I think most of what we've bumbled on about is about other stuff, which I'm sure and I hope for people is, stop watching the news. I used to watch the news all the time, like a lot of old people. I always watch the news. I only watch it every other day now because I've got too many other things to do. I'm reading too many books. I'm going to learn to be a concert pianist over the next few months, and a bunch of other stuff because we've got the time. But let's just call it the thing. Don't say that word anymore, because
we won't say that word. Thanks very much, Roger. Brilliant. Well, thanks very much for listening. I really enjoyed that. It's always lovely having a good old chin wag with Roger. We did do an episode a few years ago in my garage, and I can't quite remember why now. But it was a lovely sunny day then. Today, a little bit less gorgeous, but we were in our both self-isolated, so we were very safe. It was very kind of Roger to find the time to talk to us. Thank you so much, as always, to all our lovely Patreon supporters who make the Fully Charged Show universe possible. Please do subscribe to this podcast and leave us one of those lovely reviews. We've had some wonderful reviews. Thank you so much for posting those. That does help the word spread. So whatever podcast device you use to listen to this, please do subscribe to it. And well, as always, if you have been, thank you for listening.